that even though it's Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, I'm still on a little bit of a sugar high from the Gators national championship on Monday night. I was there at the Alamo Dome. So the University of Florida is the only university in America that can claim 3 basketball national championships and 3 football national championships. And so that's a pretty impressive thing to be able to do, to be good in both of those over the years. And we're actually optimistic about the football outlook for the Gators next year. They're in a tough schedule, tough league. Now, with this game, so we live in Tallahassee, which where the governor's residence is, and so my kids, I've got a 2nd grader, 1st grader, and a preschooler, and so this is what they know, and they're all big-time Florida State fans. And it's gotten to the point, and like I'm not pushing them anywhere, like because they can make their own decisions, but they've really gravitated towards Florida State to the point where they not only root for Florida State, they actively root against the Gators. And so I told them, we were thinking when Florida made it to Final Four that they were going to play Duke in the championship game. And I told these kids, I said, guys, with me being governor, you cannot be rooting for Duke against the University of Florida. And so they all agreed that they would root for the Gators against an out-of-state team. And so even my kids are on board for that one. So it was really good that we were able to do that. For those of you who are from Florida, great to see you. For those of you who are visiting, one of the things, I'll go through some of the stuff Florida's done and kind of where we rank now, and we're proud of those achievements. But people will ask me, how did you do this? How did you guys do this? How come Florida's doing well here? And part of what I do is I can look at some of these other states, Illinois, New York, some of the others, look what they're doing, and then just do the opposite. It's a great cheat code to have to make sure that we're doing good policy. So we in Florida, part of the thing, so if you look at rankings, which, they are what they are, but most of these people that are doing this do not want to rank Florida high if they could do, their political orientation is a little different. But we're ranked #1 economy 2 years in a row by CNBC, #1 education 2 years in a row by U.S. News, and then higher education, we've been #1 for 8 straight years. We have the lowest tuition, in-state tuition, in the entire country, and we've not raised it 1 cent since I've been governor. We're also #1 for new business formations. We have more new businesses formed in Florida than either California or Texas, and they have many more people than we do in Florida. We're 23 million, 23.5. California's 38, Texas probably 29, and yet we've consistently led the country in new business formations. We're also #1 for entrepreneurship, #1 for talent development. We have the lowest crime rate we've had in 50 years, and our taxes, we have no income tax, and we have either the lowest or second lowest per capita state tax burden anywhere in the country. And one of the things we've decided to do is to pay down our state's debt. So if you go, Florida's been a state for 180 years. If you take all the debt that's been accumulated, just since I've been governor, we've paid off 41% of that, and we're looking to do more over these next 2 years. So we now have the lowest per capita debt of any state in the entire United States. So what we're doing is actually getting the job done. I was telling some of the folks earlier, people vote with their feet. We're a mobile society now. 100 years ago, it wasn't as easy to just say, I'm going to pick up and move from Michigan to Florida as it is now. So we've had particularly since COVID, we've had really sharp contrast between what Florida has done and some of these other states that are our competitors, California, some of the Rust Belt states, New York, New Jersey, and whatnot. And people were able to see that sharp contrast, and they've responded by voting with their feet. And that's really the most powerful indicator that you can have. So we've led the country in net in-migration since I've been governor. I am not out recruiting people to move to Florida, by the way, because we've got a lot of people. We have traffic. There's different things, but it is a free country, and people can do it if they want to do it. And over this period of time, there's been more adjusted gross income move into the state of Florida than has ever moved into another state over a similar period of time in all of American history, even adjusted for inflation. So that's a powerful statement that people are gravitating to the state for quality of life, opportunity. They want to invest in the state of Florida because they see, what we've been able to do. And if you think about it, I mean, like your industry, we saw this issue a year or two ago start popping up in places like New York and California on these squatters. They just go in and take over a house, and then you go to try to reclaim your house, and the laws are saying you're the bad guy. What? How does that work? And so, we didn't really have major problems with that in Florida, at least that I could tell. But I'm like, we've got to put the kibosh on this. And so we worked with the legislature, got legislation, and we ended the squatter scam in the state of Florida once and for all with signing that legislation. And that's just what you do. And that's just some of the things that you have to do. So we're proud about being proactive and taking on big issues and leading on big issues. Of course, one of the reasons why people gravitated here, we during COVID really fought against the prevailing orthodoxy, especially after 4 or 5 weeks when it was clear that what they were saying was not consistent with the data. And so we said kids need to be in school, businesses have a right to operate. And that was like a big deal compared to where people like Fauci were saying all this stuff. I mean, you go to some of these resorts around here, a lot of these would have gone out of business had we not done, what we did. You have like Universal Studios and Disney and these, they were open in Florida and closed for like 1.5 years in California over the similar period of time. There was no reason they couldn't be open, but we had to do a stake in the ground. What we were doing at the time, people look back now and say, oh yeah, I was with you. Trust me, most people were not with me then. It was controversial. It was unpopular to be leaning in and doing some of these things. I mean, I remember Fauci, I made a big deal. Like I did an event, this is probably, 3 months, 4 months into COVID. I did an event at a restaurant and I brought all the employees up, because he was saying you shouldn't have restaurants open. You have to eat outdoors, all this stuff. And I'm bringing the butcher up and the bartender, and they're telling their stories about, what the jobs mean to them and everything like that. And it was common sense. It was the right thing to do to stand by these people. But what they would do in some of these other areas, like Chicago, Fauci's like, you have to eat outdoors. So what they would do is they would close the streets and they'd set up tables on the sidewalk and outside the restaurants and then serve it. Now, look, in August in Chicago, I'm sure that's pleasant. I'm sure it's fine. It doesn't work in December in Chicago to do that. So, but rather than go indoors, which most rational people would do, no, that's indoor dining. Fauci said you couldn't do it. So what would they do? They would build enclosures around the outdoor tables. And I'm thinking, like, what difference does that make? And so you had this insanity reigning. I remember there'd be people from Chicago, they'd be doing business together, but instead of just meeting in Chicago, they'd all fly down to South Florida, go to a restaurant, be normal for a day, do the deal, then they'd all fly back. And we were seeing that. So we really, I think, planted a flag in the ground to be rational, to be evidence-based, to make sure that people were able to make the best decisions for themselves. And that had a huge impact on Florida's trajectory and our growth and everything that's happened since then. We've also been willing to take on big issues with respect to education. We had a fight with a company that's pretty big in this area about, is it appropriate for these young kids in schools to be having things like gender ideology taught to them, where they're taught that they're not born, they may have been born in the wrong body, their gender's a choice. Look, as a parent, as a young kids, I don't want that. I want the kids to have normal education. So we had to do battle with them. And most people, for Florida, no one ever did battle with them. I mean, they're the 800-pound gorilla. And I didn't know how it was going to work out, but quite frankly, I didn't care. I got to do what I think is right. So we'd have families moving here because they were concerned about what was going on in the schools and other parts of the country. I mean, you look at some of the things that drive up costs for people to do business, like excessive litigation. When I became governor, Florida was viewed as the #1 judicial hellhole in the entire country. Part of it is we had a very activist liberal Supreme Court. Part of it is we had a lot of sue first, ask question later policies that were involved in the state of Florida. Interestingly, we had 4 liberal justices, 3 nominally conservative justices when I became governor, but 3 of the 4 liberal justices reached mandatory retirement when I got sworn in, so they were off the court. So I replaced those 3 justices my first month in office and basically totally transformed the judiciary, because for years, any time you would have something come down the pike, they would always rule on the side of more lawsuits, and they would always rule on the side of the personal injury lawyers. That changed. Now they actually would be willing to apply the law. And then, once we got the courts in order, we had to do major legal and tort reform. And so that was a huge lift. It was very difficult to do. We got that done a couple years ago, and then what's happened since then? So 23 was the big tort overhaul, legal reform in Florida. In 2023, auto insurance rates nationwide went up 20%. In Florida, it went up 20%. We don't have the best drivers here either. So it's just the first full year of the tort reform, 24, auto insurance rates nationally went up 20%. In Florida, it went up 5%. So we were way under the net, and part of it is, there's inflation, it's more expensive to do. So far this year, the rate filings from the major companies, 4.5% decrease on average. Some have more decrease. The only reason that's happened is because you did the litigation reform. Same with the property market. We've had 6 major hurricanes in 7 years, and a period of record national inflation, certainly over the last 30 or 40 years. Over this period of time, not ideal circumstances, for this market. But one of the things that was driving costs and instability in Florida was they had these lawsuit provisions to incentivize lawsuits, and even attorneys get money if they win. And then if they sue you, you don't get anything if you beat them. And so you had massive numbers of lawsuits, to the point we had 78% of all litigation costs for homeowners insurance claims nationwide. And the majority of that was in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties, which incidentally have not been hit by hurricanes. Dade a little bit in Irma, but very little relative. And so that's a cottage industry, right? That's designed to benefit those. So the legislature passed, I signed reform of that. So 24, we had the first year of stability in that market than we've had in a long time. Our premium increases were lower than all 49 other states individually. And so far this year, you're seeing more stability in all the rate filings that are coming down the pike. That's with having 2 major hurricanes in 2 weeks last year. 5 years ago, people would say if this had happened in Florida, that the entire market would have just totally collapsed. And it's complicated. There's a lot of other things beyond the control of us. But the one thing that the policymakers in Florida could control is, do we want to incentivize higher costs that get passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices, or do we want to put a stop to that? And by putting a stop to that more than anything else has allowed there to be stability that has finally arrived, in this marketplace. So those are tough fights. As a matter of fact, it's interesting as people look to Florida. Hey, what did you do here? What did you do there? People come and they'll try to copy what we've done, even on legal reform, other things. The Florida House of Representatives right now, they didn't run on any of this. They're actually trying to undo the legal reforms that we have put in place in the state of Florida, that many of them voted for, and they're now trying to undo it. Why would they be trying to undo it? We can point to tangible benefits, and it's because of the influence of the plaintiffs' bar and how they push for this stuff. I think it's a huge mistake for them to flip-flop on legal reform. I think what they're trying to do will not benefit Floridians. I think it will raise costs on individuals, consumers, and will raise costs on businesses. And it is not what they told the voters they would do. They're basically running for office on the Florida successes, the Florida model, and then they're getting in and they're trying to undercut that, thinking that somehow their voters aren't going to know that that's what they're doing, that they're not doing what they were told to do, what they told voters that they would do. So it's really, really sad to see. We're not going to let any of this stuff fly. But the reality is people that look to Florida and say, oh, this is the model we want to do. Just don't understand. This is not hardwired here. We've had success. We have momentum. But there's a lot of people in this political system here who would absolutely want to fritter that away. and who would run a return back, to days when we weren't leading on all these different issues. And so, look, as long as I'm here, I'm going to be a force, to continue the momentum and to continue to lead. But that's just what's kind of under the surface here. So I think that that's something that people should really, really be concerned about. Now, the outlook for us on education is strong. The outlook for us on economy is strong. Now, we're not going to be immune to what's going on with the national economy. I told people that, after the election, I was like, look, what Biden is handing over to Trump, we might see a downturn just based on the business cycle, right? Now you have markets. There's different things going on with the markets. So I don't know how that all is going to shake out. I think, though, Florida's position to, if you go back to the 2008 recession, the Great Recession, we did worse than most other states on that. We got hit harder because so much of the economy was built up in real estate speculation. I think this time, because our economy is much more diversified, I don't think that we've had necessarily the same factors that happened leading into that if we do have a slowdown, I think we'll do better than other states around the country. We're not going to be immune to it, but I think we're positioned to do better. And from a budget perspective, in the Great Recession, the Florida legislature raised taxes on people, and the governor at the time signed it. Well, we've quadrupled our state's rainy day fund since I've been governor. So if you do have a situation where the revenue is not coming in as well, need to plug a hole, you're not going to be doing any raising taxes. You take a little bit of money from the rainy day fund, plug it in, and you're good to go. So we're built for the long haul. We're built really strong. And I think we're going to be able to weather, if there are storms on the horizon, we'll be able to weather it. Now, hopefully there aren't any more literal storms on the horizon, because we've had enough of that. And, when you're going through these so first of all, this is something that's really important for the state, just because, we're this peninsula in the middle of a tropical environment. And when you have these storms, if it gets into the Gulf, it's got to hit something. And we've got hundreds of miles of target on the west coast of Florida. In the Atlantic, they tend to be more fish storms, but obviously we've got hundreds and hundreds of miles that it can do there. So this is a big deal for us. We understand that this is something that you need to take seriously. So when I became governor, I had my guys just look at, okay, what's been done well, what's been done poorly, what can do better. And if you go back to Hurricane Andrew in 1992, this is a massive storm. It was like anarchy there. Like, there was really no robust response. The state was not all in. The locals didn't do a very good job. And that, I think, the poor response was part of the reason it's taken Homestead a long time to be able to, I mean, they still probably aren't where they were. Now, they have done some good things more recently, but you don't want one of these storms. Obviously, protect people's lives and property as best you can, rescue all that, and that's the most important thing. But you don't want one of these places to be knocked down for months and months with no real bounce back, because that can end up years and years of suboptimal performance. So I said, we got to be ready, we got to go. So what can we do differently? So one of the things that we do in Florida is we pre-stage a lot of our assets and resources. We work with utility companies to have all these linemen scheduled, stationed in different parts. And so literally you could have like a Hurricane Ian Category 5 hit Fort Myers, and within 6 hours of the storm passing, you've got utility crews that are down there cleaning debris, reconnecting. And so we've had hurricanes. We just had Milton. We had, I think, 4.2 million that were restored in record time, the fastest restoration in history. Ian had been the fastest at the time, and then you keep doing it. But it's not just our big utilities now who do that. We have these electrical co-ops, these smaller outfits. They actually got the power back on quicker than even the big, powerful investor-owned utilities. And so we've created a culture of rapid response, making sure if there's people that need to be stabilized or need to be rescued, you do that, but then restore services as quickly as possible. Because even in a really bad storm, most people aren't knocked out of their home. Most people are not in danger of life and limb. And so if you can get all those people back on their feet as quick as possible, it makes it so much easier to deal with the rest of that. That goes for things like gas. So we had Hurricane Ian, didn't really interrupt the supply of gas. I did have some gas that we would provide, but these gas stations were open like the next day. Well, Hurricane Milton, we had the ports were basically knocked off, Manatee and Tampa, and that's where we get most of the fuel for that part of Florida. So we had fuel ready, and we set up all these little gas stations around the Tampa Bay area. We didn't even charge people. They could come in, fill up their car, and then go. And that got us through, 3 or 4 days before the ports were back up and everything started going again. But getting back on your feet quickly, and now you go to some of these places that got hit by Helene and Milton, it isn't like there ain't damage, but man, there's a lot of tourists, there's a lot of stuff, and it just makes a huge difference. And so that's just all about captaining the ship, making sure everyone's doing it, and we've got a great culture in Florida of emergency response from the ground level all the way up to the top of the state government. And I think if President Trump wants to just block grant money to us and get FEMA out of it entirely, we would do even better, because a lot of what we do is in spite of the FEMA bureaucracy, not because of the FEMA bureaucracy. So sometimes people say, oh, I don't know if I want to move to Florida, because of hurricanes. I can tell you, you would much rather be in Florida having to deal with a hurricane in our response than be subject and be basically victim to those fires in California where there wasn't a robust response, some of the other things that can happen in other parts of the country. So we've really shown you can mitigate this. And then the new construction, you guys know, things that are built new, you could go to Category 5 storm, there'll be a home that isn't even touched, and then the next one is obliterated. This one was built in 60, this one was built in, or actually 70s are probably the low point of strength. Then this one was built with the new building codes, and it gets through the storm, particularly on the wind. So we've really done a good job with that, and I think people can feel confident we'll continue to do it. Well, listen, I'm happy to do the fireside, and we'll take any questions that people have. But welcome to the free state of Florida. You guys picked a good spot. It's a great time of year, and looking forward to answering some questions.